All right. Well, thank you for just being my therapist for the past 5 minutes. We're
Always
rolling,
happy to.
baby. My friend, I know you as Bryan Fitzsimmons, from when I met you at the Real Coaches
Yep.
Summit. But why don't you tell me who the hell you are for the people and everyone else involved in this shit?
Yeah. So on the socials, I'm Coach Fitz, but my name is Bryan Fitzsimmons. As you mentioned,
Mhm.
the family name was Fitzsimons, and then Ellis Island said we're gonna touch this up, make you a little more American. So we went with Fitzsimmons.
Mhm.
So
Awesome.
yeah, I'm a fitness trainer, nutrition coach that helps moms
Hmm.
over 40
Yeah.
basically just sift through all the BS diet culture crap they've heard over the years so that they can
Hmm.
live their best lives in a time-friendly, manageable way.
Yeah. I love that, dude. And I think, well, first, damn them at Ellis Island. How dare they take the Fitzsimons
How
name and turn to
dare
Fitz?
they? I was actually like, I'm gonna freaking change it back. And then I'm
That's
like, nah, let's not erase history. It
that's a lot of
happened.
work,
It
actually.
happened.
What because I think you asked me. I had the pleasure of being on your podcast as well. I believe it's the Fit Over 40 podcast, right?
Fit 40, but yeah,
Fit 40. All right, Fit 40
yeah.
podcast.
It's
Plug that right
clean,
away.
it's simple, just fit 40.
Fit 40, Fitzsimmons. What is your story with fitness? Like what got your start into all this shit?
Well, I grew up in a house that was never at a loss for muscle and fitness magazines.
Oh.
So every time you go to the bathroom, there was a muscle and fitness magazine on the top. And I'm just like, I pretty much grew up looking at guys like Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler,
Mm,
Branch Warren was one of my early like heroes for anybody who knows the bodybuilding people. So I always kind of had that in my head. And
mm,
then we, I grew up, we grew up in the era of like lifting heavy when you're younger stunts your growth. It'll
yeah.
affect your growth plates. So basically didn't get to start until like seventh, eighth grade when my parents got like one of those cable machines that cost way too much money that ate
Hmm.
up all the space. But I went to town. And
Yeah.
then through that, or through high school, getting strong for football and all the other sports and trying to get the attention of girls, that was the start.
Hmm. Oh yes. And did
Yep.
it ever really work, man? It's because it didn't work
I
for
was
me.
actually I was listening to Mike Israetel on another podcast, and he's like,
Yeah.
if I was to tell anybody one thing, it'd be you will not get girls from getting jacked. And I'm just like, oh my God, I've never heard such true words.
So true, dude. If anything, you are just attracting more guys into your life because they're like, "What supplements do you do, man? You look great," and you're just like, "Ah."
Exactly. The only attention you ever get are from dudes, and it's usually the middle-aged dudes that
Yep.
want you to be like, pop the top off, man. Let's see the abs.
That's
And you're just like,
right.
I'd rather not.
Oh yeah, dude. And they always have some crazy fitness advice for you too.
Oh yeah.
That's so funny. So we have a very similar introduction to fitness as well. For me though, in my house it was more of like I don't know if Oprah had a magazine back then, but like definitely more of like like the GQ magazines, like the Cosmopolitan. Like my mom is like a hairdresser, so it's like all these magazines she had at work. It was like all I saw. So I saw more like lose weight really quick magazines, like all this
Yeah.
shit.
You
Um,
had diet culture surrounding you 24/7.
yes, and you had the bodybuilding culture to be. How can I get ripped real quick?
Talk about toxicity. We have all of it.
Oh, 1000%. Do you feel like that was a good baseline for you? Like that kind of introduction to it?
I think it's a net positive, but
Okay.
there were a lot of negatives along the way because I did go down the bodybuilding track and I did compete in natural shows and everything.
Mm.
But I always had that interest of should I hop on the juice? Should I not? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I did. I probably like, I hopped on the juice for like a month to get ready for spring break. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't want to do this ever. Because there's so many side effects and stuff and you're
Yeah,
just
dude.
like yeah, I see all these guys with thinning hair and they like tell me that they're feeling all these effects. I don't want that. So it could have gotten bad, but it didn't.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I appreciate your transparency on that because I don't think that's talked about enough, especially I think with younger kids, because that's something I never did like steroids per se. I got into like the pro hormone culture, uh, which
Hey,
don't e
back in the day, with how easy they were to get, I
oh,
wish
it's
I went on that train. That would have been so awesome.
to be honest, I don't know what the fuck I was taking it because some guy who was on my football team's like, yeah, take this, take this. I'm like, okay. And yeah, dude, it's one of those things for me too, where I'm grateful my mom found it in my car because God forbid, who knows if I would have still been on that shit, just taking it because it was like that moment where I had buds over and she just screams at me to get downstairs and I see it sitting on the counter. I go, oh shit. I'm like, okay, like let's make some life changes here.
Yeah. And honestly, after hearing some like horror stories,
Yeah.
especially my girlfriend's a doctor and she's come across people that have had horrible effects from steroids, like
Yeah.
jaundice beyond belief, showing up completely yellow because their liver is just
Oh,
failing
wow.
them at like
Jeez.
30 years old. And you're
Right.
just like, yeah, I definitely dodged a bullet there.
You certainly did, my friend. And talking about at least some sort of movement, speaking of dodging, but when I was on your podcast, we got pretty deep into like that monastery retreat I went to and mindful walking and all that. And then you told me today that since we had that conversation, you've been dabbling a wee bit into that.
I have.
Tell me
It's
how
been
that's been
nice.
going.
It's been nice because I mean, I'm very much a person that gets caught up in making the most of my time almost to a detriment, where it's
Mm,
like if I'm not doing something that doesn't have a purpose, then what the hell am I doing it for?
mm,
And it burns you out mentally.
yeah,
So you're just like, I need some time to just go clear my mind, to blank it out and just kind of be present because
yeah.
when you're so detached from what's in front of you and you're not taking in the experience of whatever it is you're doing, then you miss out and you get
Mm,
so caught up in what is it getting me rather than I just want to be here.
mm, that's so
And
true.
being able to especially focus on what you were talking about, like feeling your steps, do
Mm,
like not pounding them into the ground and going softly
hmm.
and hearing the birds and the wind and stuff. And
Yeah,
as a person from New Jersey who is a very big speed walker, I
yeah.
am not kidding. It looked like I was like, I don't know how to describe it. Like basically like having a seizure or something, trying to slow myself down, where I'm like, like I need to slow down.
It is the weirdest thing too, dude, because that's so funny you said that because I was just in Portland when we I think we just did our podcast like a week or two ago.
Yeah,
Holy crap,
honestly, I
time.
think this might come out before ours does. I
It
don't
might
know.
think well, this will probably come out in July, but
Oh, okay, I'll beat you then. We're
all
good.
right, good, good. I don't want any spoilers for the people, but it's so true though, dude. Because when I was in Portland, I went for a hike with my buddy, and his pace was very like fast, 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 and I was just like, you know what, like let's slow this down a bit because it's almost making me anxious, and that like kind of like you said, where it's like I'm not even appreciating this nature around me because our pace is so quick. So and then it's so funny because once I told him to slow down, he's like, "Oh, thanks, dude," because sometimes I just don't even realize I'm going so quick, right? And I think that is so true because, like we talked about, the intentional slowdown, it almost feels like you're training a new muscle in that way completely because you're so used, like you said, you're very purpose driven.
Yeah, it's like RDLs for the mind.
Yeah. It's like this is hard as fuck.
Yeah, it feels so awkward the first time, and you're just like, I don't even know if I'm doing this right.
How does someone walk slow? How do they get to anywhere? It's so true though, dude. How do you feel like it's helped you since doing that or implementing it?
It's made the quality better because
Mm,
when you kind of get in that hamster wheel of do this, do this, do this, do this, and you don't take a second to just breathe, you kind
mm,
of crank out a lot of half-assed work really fast. And
yeah.
then when you take that time to kind of clear your head a little bit, there's less residual stress from the previous thing. So
Mm,
you're a little bit more clear going into the next one.
yeah. I love that. I think that's a great point. I love how it's almost becomes like I don't know why I'm thinking this, but like a nacho, like nachos, where it's like it just
Do
becomes.
explain.
I shall. It's because it almost feels like layers and layers of things, right? So what I mean by that is like like you said, you carry what you just did into the next thing that you're doing, and then you carry that thing into the next thing, but you're also bringing the thing you started with. And before you know it, like by the end of your day, you almost become very disassociated with what you're trying to be present with, right? Like for a good example,
Yep.
we were just talking about you and your girlfriend. Like if you're going for a walk with your girlfriend, you're on a date with your girlfriend, right? Like you almost become out of that moment because you have so many things that are lingering and layered on to what you're doing now. So I love what you said about that because I do think it's almost like clearing your search history on Google, right? And as a
Yep.
young 13-year-old boy, I did that very much many times.
Hey, I think we all have that muscle
That's
ingrained in us where it's like, all
right.
right, every time new technology comes out, it's like,
Yeah.
where's the browser trigger?
Private browser? What is this? It's so true. And shout out to my mom who listens to this podcast. She knows. But it is I love that because it is so true to where it's like when you when you get away from this purpose hamster wheel mindset, which has benefited you in a lot of ways, I'm sure. Right? It's gotten you to your
Hey,
career.
you get a shitload done.
You get a shitload done, but it's also like, and this is the part I love about it, where it's like, well, what's my why? What's my purpose to it? Right? So let me ask you this. I'll flip it to you and we can talk about that. But what is your purpose for like why you do what you do, why you work so hard on your business, why you work so hard on your podcast, all that?
I am glad we're doing it in this location because I have my board right there. So I
Mm,
never ever forget. I've got two things. Like I
okay.
always have my business priorities and my life priorities.
Ooh.
And first and foremost for the business priorities right now is just filling the roster and simplifying the whole thing.
Mm,
Because it's so easy as a coach to really just like kind of go off the rails and have it to the point where you've got everything you want, but it's so confusing. It doesn't do the job.
yeah.
So that's why that's there. But when it really comes down to the why of like my life priorities, number one is building freedom.
Ooh.
Because as much as we want to say, like, yeah, I'm in this just to help people, it's all I really care about. Yes, that it honestly, when it comes down to ways to make money, helping others is the my favorite way because not only are you fueling your own life, you're also fueling somebody else's and improving it. So if I'm
Mm,
going to make money, I'd rather do it that way every single time. But
mm,
I'm not going to dance around the fact that I want to live a certain lifestyle. I want to have the freedom to do the things that I want to do because when you are a trainer, especially in the early
mm,
days when you're waking up to go to a 5 a.m. session and you some days you're staying as late as 8 or 9 and you
mm,
barely have enough time to eat, let alone sleep and catch important life events, that stuff really ate at me a little bit and I needed
yeah.
to make that a priority. Um, Next is to enjoy it because if you don't have the space to actually like get out of your head a little bit and have that
Right.
freedom, you can't really enjoy everything.
Right. I love that. And I love that you have that written down. I think that is makes me love you more. I think that is something that and especially with I think the audience that you work with specifically with moms over 40, but I think having your actual priorities laid out of why you're doing something, I think is so like we talk about it, right? We're like, why is this your goal? Like, what's your deep why, right? But like I think too often we drift from that, right, in order to satisfy something short term. And I think, and I love what you said is you kind of label as building freedom, which I think is a great way to look at your approach for your work so that your work is actually a vehicle to not only help others, but for you to enjoy your lifestyle, right? And I think
Yeah,
whether it's other coaches I've talked to, anybody in any career, any 9 to 5, any mom, anything like that, but when you are able to recognize that your vehicle is the process, right? It is the weight loss journey, is the workouts, all these things, right? Your career. It's just the vehicle for what you actually want in life, right? And
exactly.
when you prioritize what you want, you put less I'll say like you put less investment in like that vehicle and more investment into your end result and why you want it.
Yeah. And it also helps a ton when it comes to filtering things because
Mm,
like as an like you can say entrepreneur, business owner, whatever. I hate the word entrepreneur, but as a business owner, there's a million things that you could do that sound like great ideas. And then when you're like, does this line up with what I actually want? And you have that staring you in the face, like,
Mm,
I always want to have a certain amount of people I work with in person because I'm a personal trainer first and foremost, and I need to scratch that itch.
right.
But if I take on this next person, will that affect my ability to build freedom? And will I be locked in and feel really guilty if I ever have to go on a vacation or things like that? Like
Mm,
there needs to be a balance there.
yeah, I think that's so true. And I think it, like, you also just spoke to your own awareness, right? Like self-awareness of, hey, like I love this online career that I've built, but I also recognize I require an in-person interaction because that fills my cup too. So I think
Which
that
fulfills that second part, which is enjoy.
that's right. Exactly. So how, I guess if we can relate this a lot to typically what you actually, you know what? Let's backtrack a little more before that. So you typically work, your audience is working with moms over 40, correct? What
Correct.
what got you into sort of that's how who I want to coach, this is the people I want to help?
Yeah. So when I was right out of college, I have a degree in criminology. So I was
Mm,
going down the route of something civil service. I got that because they didn't have fire science and I wasn't sold on firefighting just yet. But
mm,
I decided to go the route of trying to get a firefighting job. Did the fire academy and all that good stuff. But it's a long drawn out process here in Jersey, and you need a part-time job just to fuel like doing that. It's
mm,
because it's tough. So in the meantime, I got a job as a personal trainer because I was working out with some buddies, and my one friend Mike goes, you're actually kind of good at giving direction on this. Like I'm actually getting it. And he's like, you should
mm,
do this. And I'm like, all right. So did it part-time, got my certification, and the first job I ever got was New York Sports Club, but that lasted like a week or two. That didn't work out. But right after that was Get in Shape for Women, which is basically like a curves
mm,
for anybody that knows what that is. And it caters to women that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. And I had the time of my life training those ladies. They
wow.
were awesome. I loved every minute of training there. And unfortunately, business was looking like it was going downward. So I'm like, all right, I need to find the next one. And then that's where I landed on where I really cut my teeth training, which is a gym in New Jersey called Gabriel Fitness and Performance. And I was there for 7 years, and they cater to the 40 plus population. And I basically just got like a 7 year internship on exactly how to train people in that population.
Mm,
And then when it came to the nutrition side of things, I learned a ton on things that worked, things that didn't, and like how it applies to so many different situations.
I love that. So you're basically you fell into personal training because you tried to be a firefighter and that requires a part-time job as well. And then you basically got indoctrinated into that culture of coaching women over 40, right? Uh, what were some of the things you loved about coaching that population?
First thing that comes to mind is just the honesty,
Mm.
because especially the ladies over 40, they don't really hold back. And
Yep.
I love that as a coach because when I talk to a lot of the women, they'll be like, apologies if this is TMI. And I'm like, when I hear that phrase, I'm like, this is good. This allows me to know what I need to know.
Yes.
And they'll just tell it how it is and
Mm-hmm.
won't really hold back. And I love that style. And then
Mm,
when it comes to the issues and stuff, it's usually not an issue of laziness or being like selfish or all these negative traits. It's
mm,
because they always put themselves last. Like they care
mm,
about their family so much that they're willing to just put themselves on the back burner. And
mm,
I honestly admire the shit out of that. It doesn't have to be that way, but that type of quality of person that's so selfless, I love working
mm.
with that type of person.
I love that. And I definitely have met many women who, like you say, when they start off a sentence, where like TMI, but like, AKA, my mom has said that to me many times as well.
Oh, see, I give you credit because my mom has made a couple of those statements, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait until I get an assistant coach, or let me send you to somebody else.
Right. Oh, 1000%, dude. And sometimes it is like, all right, Bob, like let's ease back
Seriously,
there.
I guarantee the first reason I will ever hire an assistant coach is solely
Hmm.
just to take care of family, just
Yeah.
so I don't have to have those conversations.
Right, right, right. I love that. So basically, you really love that population because the vulnerability and transparency that, they put forth and their selflessness, right? So their ability to put themselves on the back burner. But you also mentioned like it doesn't have to be that way. So I guess what are your thoughts on like these women who do put themselves on the back burner, and why does that, I guess in my own words, how does that benefit? Is that neutral? Is that a negative eventually?
Yeah, I mean, eventually it usually turns into a negative for most people with the environments that we're in, with the time constraints that we have. It's damn near impossible to live a healthy life without devoting some portion of your life and your energy and your brain towards being healthy in a way that you are fit and you are eating correctly and things like that to fuel you to be your best self.
Mm,
And I think a lot of times it's almost like you're on borrowed time, where it's you're giving every part of yourself, knowing that down the road this is going to catch up, not thinking about it for
mm,
now because we're so locked into what's happening right in front of our faces, but eventually it's going to catch up.
mm,
And the other thing too that I think gets lost is the fact that being present right at that time is not as important as the lessons that you create when you're not present. Because I
mm,
know one of the things that a lot of the moms get caught up in is like, I don't like, with young kids or whatever, they're like, I just want to be there with them, I want to spend time with them, which is great. But if you're spending time with them, showing them like sitting on the couch, eating things I shouldn't be eating, not doing
mm.
workouts,
Yeah.
that's not going to have as beneficial of an impact as telling your kids, mom's got to go work out, mom's got to go like prep some healthy meals, so you guys got to take care of yourselves for a little bit, depending on what age group you're working with.
Mm,
Like if they're really young, like doing something like a baby swap, for example, is a great idea, where with their spouse or with their friends, one of them watches them and then they trade off. But
mm.
creating that space to say, hey, mom's got to take care of herself, is going to speak volumes and is going to teach so many good lessons, rather than just saying, I want to be with them 24/7 or as much as I possibly can,
Mm.
regardless of how mom feels.
Yeah. I love that. And you could tell that you've definitely worked with women for a long time because it
Is it that
is
obvious?
it's obvious. It's basically written all over your face. No. But I think that is so, so true in terms of eventually it does turn into negative, right? Because it's that age-old saying, right? Where it's like, hey, like if would you basically throw yourself in front of a moving car? Would you throw your partner, or would you let your partner get hit by the car? Right? Not You're not throwing anybody in front of a car. But basically, and people
And
are like,
so,
well, I would jump in front of that car, like no problem. But it goes into thinking like, hey, like, do I prioritize love for others more than the love for myself? Right? And we all know like it's very honorable, like you just said, it's very honorable to do that, right? Like in essence it's like, yeah, like that's amazing, you put someone else's life above yours. However, kind of like we talked about with the nacho reference with the layers, right? Where it's like if you are now stacking your husbands, or you're now stacking your partners, or your kids, now your parents, now your friends, now you're the person at the grocery store, like random people you interact with, then you have now displaced yourself further and further down that list of priorities, right? And of course, that's going to have a negative impact because now you have no sense of who you are, right? Because you've just been a servant to others in essence for their needs, right? And also you almost lose the ability to have the habit for what to do for yourself, right? Like you lose, like so many women that we've worked with, right? I think you lose that skill set in how do I take care of myself?
yeah, because it's easy to get lost. The more I learn and the more I ask questions, because I mean, I'm guy who identifies as a
Mm-hmm.
cisgender male, I am never going to understand truly what it feels like to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, through asking questions, you can learn a lot and
Mm,
you can get really good at troubleshooting. But one of the
yeah.
questions that I was asking, or one of the things that I learned while asking these questions is like a lot of moms get very lost in the identity of being a mom to the point where
Mm,
there's no room for anything else. And it's like, this is my number one thing. This is what I am. And
mm-hmm.
then eventually a lot of them come out of that, like their head comes above the surface for the first time. And they're like, crap, I don't even know who the heck I am anymore
Mm,
because they're so lost in it. And when it came to me, like we do this thing where I give client only shirts, like when they leave a Google review, and I'm like, all right, guys, so I'm gonna make 4 shirt ideas. You just tell me which one's your favorite. And I made a bunch of different ones, and one of them said like strong mom, and then the other one was like mom strong or something like that, some different variation,
mm-hmm.
and nobody voted for those.
Mm,
The one that did get all the votes was this one that had like fit vertically and it said fearless, independent, and
mm,
well, I forget the other one. It was something with a T. I
mm-hmm.
forget. But everybody voted for that one. And I'm like, that's interesting. And then one of the women commented and is like, yeah, I don't like kind of having the mom thing in there because I'm more than that.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I never thought of that. Where it's like, I always thought like mom was a sense of pride and things like that, which it is. But there's so much more than just being a mom. There's
Mm,
being a spouse, there's being a friend, there's being your true identity, like who you are
mm-hmm. Yeah.
and how you view yourself and what your values are outside of all of that.
Mm,
And that usually involves self care, like going to the gym, like eating good
yeah.
meals, because you value that identity that is outside of being a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that is, I mean, that's a powerful one in general. I think when, I don't remember if we talked about this on your podcast, but I feel like you almost corner yourself when you identify as one thing, right? And it's one of those things too, right? Let's say someone identifies as a lawyer or as a marketing advertisement person. You could lose your job tomorrow, right? And now your identity is in flux, right? Because that's who you were. That's what I do. This is how I feel. This is what my day is built around, right? And I love that one of your clients was like, I am more than this, because that is so true. And again, we're bringing it back to nachos, baby. Maybe I should get some nachos today. But we have to also realize that we are not one individual item. We are a layer of different things that compose who we are, what we do, our purpose, our reasons for living, right? Our reasons for waking up in the morning, right? Like our hobbies, our activities, right? It's not just these labels we place on ourselves, right? Because you and I, we will say like, yeah, we're coaches, right? Like we specialize in this, we specialize in that. But dude, if anybody only knew us as coaches, we'd be like, no, like I like other things. We you and me love video games.
I'd be freaking frustrated. I'd be
Yeah.
like, that's it. That's all I am.
Right,
Okay.
right. It's all I am too. I'm a nacho, but it is so true, dude. Because I mean, like I said, like we are more than just what either society labels us as or what we label ourselves as, and I think that is incredibly important when it comes to, like you said, like when it comes to your goals and it comes to what self care looks like for you. Is like, don't just do self care because you're a mom. Obviously you have deep reasons why. It's like, I want to live longer for my kids, I want to be strong as fuck for my kids, like for my kids, right? And then we go back to like, well, who's the priority here though, right?
Yeah.
Because your kids aren't going to have that person who's strong as fuck who can help them be there for the long term if that person who's doing that thing is only concerned about others around them.
Yeah. And this might sound like a controversial thing, but at the end of the day, everything we do is selfish.
Mm,
We do it because we want to do it. Whether that is taking extraordinary care of our family. Why are we doing that? To fulfill this idea of what a good mom is. So I feel like I am doing a good job.
mm,
Now,
yeah.
is that selfless too? Yeah. But it's also selfish in the fact that I'm doing this because I want to feel like I'm doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use selfishness as a tool to be your best self. You can say, hey, I'm doing what I need to do right now for me. And that is selfish. But by doing that, I'm going to be able to give more of myself in other
Mm,
areas, which will be selfless. So it's
mm,
not like one or the other. I think a lot of people get stuck on the dichotomy thinking where it's like,
yeah,
if I'm doing this, then I'm not doing that.
right.
So it's very easy to fall for that trap.
Yeah, and I think that that is so true, and that is such a good theme to pull out to that selfish versus selfless, and how it isn't real. Like you're gonna have many actions of selfish versus selfless throughout the in an hour, right? Like
Yeah.
in 30 minutes, right? Like it could be like selfish for me is, well, you know what? I need to start my day with like 10 minutes of reading because that's gonna help me with my partner and having a better conversation of how our day is gonna look like and how we're gonna take care of
But
kids and
how
everything like
dare you
that.
not make your partner breakfast? That makes you a
Right.
bad partner now, doesn't it?
Right. Or allowing your partner to start their day with that 10 minutes or something like that, right? And it is so important because you are, like we said, you're gonna play multiple roles over the course of a day. But I think kind of like we're leaning towards is like the ratio should lean towards slightly you, right? Where it's like the more selfish actions that you have, it almost makes it feel like those selfless actions, they almost don't become selfless because it's just like, no, I'm in a good space to be this strong person or be this independent person in this moment because of my selfish actions.
Yeah. Because who's to say it can't be mutually beneficial?
Mm,
Like the win-wins are the best situations. So if
mm-hmm,
you can take that time for yourself to be selfish so it can help
mm-hmm,
others,
yeah.
then there's nothing wrong with being selfish for a minute.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Absolutely. And I love what you talked about before as well, how you basically referred to modeling, right? And modeling in the sense where you talked about mom needs to get her workout in.
Oh,
Mom
I thought
needs,
you were talking about 10 years ago and some pictures were about to
well, I
surface.
haven't seen those, my friend.
Hey, there's a
What are
towel
we
picture
doing
floating
here? Why don't
around.
you
I'm not
show me
even
those photos?
I'm not even kidding. There's a towel photo floating around, and if you could
Hey,
find that,
I'd like a side photo, please, black and white.
yeah, that'll be the next post.
Very selfless, I would say.
That was a selfless moment. That was
That's
for the
right.
people.
That's right. It wasn't me. It was for the people. But how, actually, that reminds me of a photo I have on my Instagram. You go deep, deep down. Many, many years ago, I my mom took the photo of me. My mom took the photo of me laying in front of a fireplace, in some PJs. It's a very just my shirt's off. I'm like that. It's the kind of relation my mom and I have. But yes, I can. I also have these photos around.
It's like,
Regardless,
Ryan, you look great. You look
that's
great.
right.
Smile for the camera.
It's more like her laughing, be like, "I can't believe you're making me do this right now," and her laughing her ass off. It's the funniest thing.
Hey,
But
moms will do anything.
uh,
I still thank my mom. She for the bodybuilding shows, like there were times where she literally shaved my back so that the tanning would come on
yes,
correctly. And
yes,
I'm like,
dude.
this is the mom duty you never thought you'd have.
Yeah, that's so funny you said that, dude, because that's the first example I thought of. Like when I didn't even bodybuild. I was just more into bodybuilding style, and I could just clearly remember my mom like trimming even my butt cheek, like going down the cheek, going down the hamstring, because you can't reach those areas by yourself. You're gonna get
You
patches.
can't. It's a team effort.
It's a team effort. Well, this is derailed, but I love the direction it's going. But
Yeah, we were
for
talking about modeling.
I think so. I think so. But yeah, we're talking about modeling. In your experience, what is the importance of modeling? Because we do know, like, let's be real, it is a very deep why, especially for moms who have been in diet culture, like they were indoctrinated in diet culture, and they're trying to, unprogram a lot of the things that they've been taught and their narratives, all these things. Like, what, in your experience, what is that importance of modeling, and why isn't it important, especially if you are um, someone who does have kids to take care of and does have the potential for examples to set?
Yeah, because I mean, especially when kids are in the picture, modeling is extremely important because it's
Mm,
gonna more so. I mean, I know for me in particular, like when I was a kid, I learned more from what my parents did rather than what they said.
ooh,
So, like when I saw my dad go out for runs, I'm like, oh, this is important. When I saw my mom working like crazy and like managing a crazy schedule, I'm like, oh, so being productive is important. Okay.
mm,
And you kind of pick up on these things and you're just like, all right, I should probably do that as a
mm,
kid because I like all kids have that innate sense of like monkey see, monkey do. Like I see my parents doing something, I want to do that too.
right,
At least
right,
when they're younger.
yeah.
Teenage years, crapshoot, they're gone. But
Fuck you, mom.
then it's like they do everything the opposite. But that's
Yeah,
besides the point. But
yeah.
in those early years, it's really important for them to see things like that because it
Mm,
sticks with them. Like I have memories from when I was maybe like, I want to say maybe 5, 6 years old of going to a fitness class and being in the daycare area with my cousin while my aunt was doing a
oh
step
wow.
aerobics class or something in the next door
Yeah.
or in the next room. And you're just like, how the hell did that stick? Like,
Mm,
why is that a core memory? But it is.
yeah. That's
So
so
like
true.
when you're with your kids, especially in these early years, you want to set the example. So it's like
Mm,
it's of utmost importance. And if we're really writing down priorities and one of your priorities is I want to be an example for my kids, then you got to walk the walk. You got to do what you
mm,
say you're going to do because it's going to carry over. Otherwise, we're setting an example of mom or dad sets these goals and doesn't really actually hold themselves accountable, which makes it okay.
mm,
And then not exactly ideal. That's not what we want to teach the next generation.
right. That's so true. And it's funny because I also have some memories about sort of like what is imprinted on you as well. And I one of those things I can see my mom doing Taibo in the living room, like doing that like a few times a week, going for her walks. My dad had like I never realized how jacked my dad was when I was younger. Like he had such like a gorilla chest and
You
like I'm
gave him
just
no credit.
no credit. He never had abs, but it doesn't matter. Now we know it doesn't matter as much. But I will say the guy freaking was jacked. And it is so true though, because it is important for you to see these healthy habits and sort of what your parents prioritize, or we go back to priorities and what's important for them and why. And then we also have things that, hey, we need to uninstall, right? And I think for me, it's like, and again, love my mom, but did get taken to some Weight Watcher meetings when I was a kid, and not that it was for me, but just being in that environment, how that can create either a negative impact on the scale, or like seeing how disappointed my mom was when the scale didn't go down or stayed the same or it went up, right? And how that would affect her mood for the rest of the day and maybe in the week. And I think that is important when we are thinking about modeling, is to ask yourself the question, what do I need to uninstall and what do I need to install so that
Mm-hmm.
the future generation does not carry what I carry and what the previous generation carried. And I think that is so important. I'm curious what your thoughts on this too, because I had this conversation with a client the other day about how you have the potential to change the trajectory of the future generations before you based on what you're modeling and your actions.
Yeah, because it can be powerful when you take it when you take control of your own health. Because imagine you're the family where everybody says, "Yeah, we're big boned. Yeah, like we're
Mm,
just heavy set. Like it's just kind of in the genes."
mm,
And then you're the person that sets the trajectory of all of a sudden now you're that family that's fit, and nobody understands why your whole family is super duper healthy and they can't get
mm,
their shit together. And
yeah.
you're now flipping the script and you're just like, all right, my mom set me up with these really good habits or my dad set me up with these really good habits and it's just the way that I live.
Mm,
Meanwhile, right now, present day, mom's putting in that work so that the kids have it easy
yeah.
and
I
they don't have to struggle with those like image issues either. Because
mm,
I know, I honestly think this might have been that same client that told me that her son made a comment saying like, I want strong arms like mom. And
Mm,
meanwhile, so many times it's this conversation of how do I get smaller? How do I get leaner?
yeah.
How do I lose to the point where I don't take up any space and I don't like, I'm not noticed.
Mm,
Meanwhile, the big impact comes from mom is strong as shit. I want to
yeah.
be like that.
Mm, that's so true. And I love how and it is like those little moments, no pun intended, name the podcast. But I
Well
think it is
done,
those
sir.
it is those little moments, I believe, that does kind of bring it full circle, right? Where it does bring it to the point where it's like, oh yes, this person's always watching me, whether I realize it or not. And also this little person is reminding me of something that is they're not telling me, maybe some kids can be real rash, but they're not telling me like, hey, you look fat in those jeans, or that you should lose weight, or that saying negative shit that we say in our own heads to ourselves, right? They're telling me you look strong. I want to be as strong as mom. And that's almost like that simple but important mindset of being strong and refocusing your goals on what I can do besides losing weight and fitting in these jeans. I think that is such a great reframe from a child that a lot of moms, I think, can really benefit from. Uh, and I love that you shared that too. And I think it is so, so important because it is those like little reminders that remind you, like, hey, this is what it's all about.
Yeah, and that the talking, like the words that we actually say out loud to ourselves or even internally, like you said, they rub off. Because,
Hmm.
I mean, I've spoken to many clients who said that their moms were always commenting on their image in a negative way, like,
Hmm.
oh, I feel so fat today, or oh, like, oh, my legs just really just don't look the way I want them to, or oh, the
Yeah.
cellulite and all this crap, and picking apart their bodies and saying everything that's wrong with it.
Mm,
And when you can flip or when you do that, it's just going to continue to perpetuate and it's going to be a thing that continues down the line.
yeah.
Now, how cool would it be if we could flip the script and be like, I really like this part of my body today? Because
Mm,
it becomes so common that if we're not picking ourselves apart, then
right.
we're not going to change. Like almost like that concept of you need somebody to shame you to cause action. When in
Mm,
reality, that doesn't do shit but make you feel worse and
right.
make you fall off more frequently.
Right. That's so, so true. And I think it really is that the words that our parents used to, whether it was they in probably in their minds, because that's how they were taught, was like, oh, this is just constructive criticism. This is just like giving you the feedback that you never asked for, that you need to hear. This is tough love, right? And it is important because one, I think, and again, I think you and I talked about this on your podcast, which again, everybody should go listen to. Um, we talked about being able to label voices in your head, right? Being able to label, well, who is actually speaking in my mind? Is this actually my own voice? Right? Because so often we will carry the voices of others, and that reinforces our own harsh criticism on ourselves, right? Like for me, one clear example I can identify for myself is I remember when I was bulking, right? For those who don't know what bulking is, it's so you're actually intentionally trying to put on weight, right? It's like you're to build
What a
muscle.
concept.
It's crazy. And I just remember I was in a sauna, and this is where I used to work at personal trainer in LA Fitness. I was in a sauna, and there's just this guy who, like, he's looking at me, and he's like a gym regular, and him and I talk every now and then. He'd probably talk to me a lot more than I need him to, so I can get my workout done. But I just remember him looking at me and just being like, "You putting on weight?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm bulking right now." He goes, "Doesn't look good on you. You look too husky." I'm just like, "Oh," and I just remember being like, "Well, good thing it's not your body." And I was just like, but like it is those things that like can really stick with somebody, and those
Yeah.
voices can really stick with you and make you a harsher critic of yourself. But it's also really important to remember being able to label and pull out those voices, be like, actually, that's not my voice. That's that fucker at the sauna at LA Fitness who had told me, hey, you are husky, and that's not actually how I perceive myself, or how I perceive others. Um, we got a temporary delay. because Brian's Brian's Wi-Fi is stalling right now. There we go. He's back, baby. Don't worry, man. I held it together while you were paused.
You see me moving side to side, like maybe he'll
Yeah.
catch me.
It's good, man. I was able to keep the people listening. Um,
There you go. But that is powerful, like how you said that it's like these specific people that put a voice to certain emotions. I know when
yeah.
we were talking about it on the podcast, I used it as a very fun way to incorporate the fact that I'm a big horror movie fan.
Mm,
And in a lot of them, like you'll find that, especially like the Exorcist style ones, like they can't get rid of the demon unless they name it.
mm,
And if you don't name it, then you don't know how to handle it. There's a whole different set of rules for every different demon.
yeah.
Like you need to know what exactly you're conquering. And if you don't know if it's anxiety, if you don't know if it's like self-loathing, if you don't know if it's
Mhm.
like a million of other different emotions, how are you going to know how to treat it?
Right. That's so funny you said that because I hate horror movies, but I saw The Nun 2, I think last
There you go.
summer.
Yeah, that's when it came out last summer.
And fucked me up. I was just like, I get nightmares. Like I'm like the person who, like, as soon as the
Hey,
lights
to
go
be
out,
fair, the nun is one of those images that sticks in your head, and you're like, "That's not leaving anytime
that's
soon."
not
That's
leaving,
that's
dude.
the that's the dark room image where you're like you're staring and you can't fall asleep. That's what you see is the
Mm-hmm.
nun.
1000%. And the scariest part about that dude is like the Warrens. So I'm sure you've seen those, like the
Yeah.
Warrens. They're from my hometown in Connecticut.
No.
Yeah, Monroe, Connecticut. So they literally lived in my hometown. They would do like ghost tours. Like they'd come to your high
Yeah.
school and talk about all their experiences and stuff like that. So like at the end of that Nun too, I think they have like a port. It's like the like the after credit scene where they go to the
Yeah.
Warrens' house and they're like, guess what's back? It's the nun. And then I'm just like, motherfucker, I'm like, these people are like making this way too real for me right now. I'm just
Hey,
like,
James Wan is not letting go of the nun.
nah,
They're gonna run that thing to the ground.
the ground, dude. And it was just so funny, but it is so true because that does remind me of the movie. It's like, well, what is this demon and how do we destroy it and all these things?
And it's actually that same universe, the Conjuring universe that the
Mm,
nun is in, is where I got that from. The Conjuring 2, when they're in England and there was a famous case of this haunted place. But basically, the woman was sitting down on her couch and she kind of went off into a daze, Elizabeth Warren, and she's like confronting it. And
mm,
while confronting it, figured out its name and then wrote
ooh,
it down and is like, I know who it is. I know who it is. And then that helped them solve it because they're
yeah.
like, I know what I'm facing now.
Right. And that's great full circle for what for what we're actually talking about on this podcast,
Yes. We're really
which
just
is
here to talk about
we're
horror
just here
movies.
to talk. It's just podcasts are just conversations, and hopefully you guys like to hear that. But again, it is true where it's once you identify that voice in your head, you know how to face it, you know how to identify it, and know that it's not your voice, right? And it's something that you've carried with you for too long, and today's the day you stop carrying with you, right? Um, this was my maybe the quickest podcast conversation I think I've ever had because we started off before we hopped on with a nice therapy session for me. So thank you for that.
No problem.
And then we us just shooting the shit, I think for this whole time has been great. Just like you have your questions on your podcast, which, I answered. I won't say what it was that I answered or the question I asked for your next guest. Um,
Yeah. I don't even remember, to be honest.
let's go. Okay, good.
My memory is not the best. That's why
Right.
I write everything down.
Yeah. So my question on my podcast, so basically to give you context, is the name of this podcast is These Little Moments Podcast because a big little moment in my life that really stuck out for me was I was at Jordan Syed's seminar years ago, and at the end of the seminar, everybody's being very vulnerable, very transparent, sharing like whether they binged eat and their struggles with food or being a mom and the harsh realities that come with it and all these things. And I felt very compelled in that moment to share my journey with mental health for the first time. So the first time ever in front of like 60 people or 50 plus people, I was just like, I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with depression, right? And that was such a big little moment for me because it was really like the start of my own vulnerability and mental health journey of being like, hey, this is what like labeling, this is what I struggle with, right? And that vulnerability and transparency has then led me to where I am today, right? And my question for you is, what is a little moment that sticks out for you in your life that you can look back and say, wow, like I'm very grateful for that because it led me to who I am today?
Yeah, so it I wouldn't consider it a little moment because it
Mm,
had a very big ripple effect, but as fucked up as it was,
mm,
it led me to where I am today, and it basically shaped all of my learning up to this point. And back when I was about 13, yeah, I was 13, I have a cousin, and if anybody listening, it comes from an Irish family, you know that the cousins are more like brothers and sisters. They're not like cousins that you see once in a while. Like, so we were tight, and my cousin Daniel had asthma, like really bad to the point where he needed to use a respirator, ventilator, whatever those things are, nebulizer,
mm,
where they hold it up and really have to do that and just sit there for 10, 20 minutes, whatever. And it was at that level. And being a teenager, obviously not going to do it all the time. And he got less frequent with it, ended up like having an asthma attack. And then that one moment turned him into a vegetable
wow.
because he stopped breathing and he went to the hospital. And then overnight, my whole family dynamic, my life just changed. So when that happened, it kickstarted in my brain. What if this were me? Like, what if I die tomorrow? What if I'm trapped in my body tomorrow, like he was? And I'm like, at 13, it turned into I'm going to live every day like it's my last. Screw it. I don't give
Mm,
a shit. I'm going to drink everything. I'm going to take all the fun drugs. And
mm,
I got to college and did that. And somewhere along the line in college, I'm like, this is a road to very little fulfillment. Like, I'm going to be living it like it's my last, but at what quality? Like, at what level am I going to get to living this way?
mm,
And I'm like, I kind of just made up my mind. I'm like, I would rather just stop living every day like it's my last because I'd rather die on the journey to something better than
mm,
chilling here without like at the base of the mountain without ever having done anything and get
mm.
crushed by a rock. Like I'd rather like be climbing and fall flat on my ass because at least I'm on the path towards something better. I'm not just
Mm.
like sitting here with like where I'm at, not improving. And then from that point forward, it was just all self improvement and stuff. And here we are.
I love that, dude. I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share that story because I do think that I could see how that helped shaped your journey in at least initially in the beginning where you're like, hey, life is very finite, it's very short. We don't know when any certain uh certainties can be taken away from us, right? And I love that you had that little aha moment where you're like, hey, live your life like your last. That was great. That served me up until this moment when I realized like I'm not trying to die from like alcohol poisoning or any of these drugs or anything
Yeah.
like that. So that is a great, I think that is a great growth moment for you because it allowed you to say like, well, hey, like I can live like my moment as if it's my last doing something that I would die for. Right. And I think that that speaks to your ability to be very purpose driven, but also for your ability to why, what your purpose is and why you're doing it for when you go back to what we talked about, where you're building freedom to help others and enjoy your lifestyle. So I love that, man. I appreciate that. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, there is the Fit 40 podcast, and that is available anywhere podcasts are. And then across all the socials like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, it's at Coach Fitz. So, at Coach, like it's spelled underscore FITZZ. Um, and then there's the website, but I don't really use it that much, fit40coaching.com. And the main hub, the real main hub is the Fit 40 family. That's on Facebook. It's
Cool.
one of the few good groups on there
Hmm.
next to Jared, who's the pro when it comes to that. But mine's
Yeah.
pretty damn good too.
Yeah.
So the Fit 40 family is like my main spot.
I love that. We'll have to do some Facebook collabs on each other's groups because I think that would really help a ton of people in my group as well. But
Absolutely.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for hopping on, as always. Of course, we'll stay on a little bit after to talk about video games.
No doubt.
But I appreciate it, man. Thank you for being on, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast. Peace out.